mandates from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Different topics we are going to jump in today. A little bit of the libertarian so-called resistance to much of what Trump is doing. Get into the fake news, debate that's going on and what that can lead to, along with the Russian, so-called Russian hacking and the Electoral College. We'll get into all of that. But first, I kind of want to get into with the Fed raising its rates and something I've talked about that we've basically been in a catch-22. Rates have been too low for too long, but raising rates also creates its own problem. What should be done? We're going to go ahead and start off by diving into Ron Paul Liberty Report. Today's Fed announcement, central planning at its worst. And of course, this was a few days ago. So we'll go ahead and dive into this.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. We noticed today that our former colleague, Paul Martin, had an article on his website that got republished on the Mises Institute and on Zero Hedge, and it has to do with the Fed announcement today. And he was postulating, what's the Fed going to tell us today? And he goes through this thing, but it's an interesting subject, and by the time a lot of people tune our program in, although we have live viewers right now, we will know what the Fed has done. So, but at least he called our attention to it. And I found the fascinating thrust of his article was, if we in our central bank do this in our planning, how does it affect the rest of the world? So we don't live in a closed world. And he talks about what the Bank of England will do, what the Bank of Japan will do, and what the ECU will do. And that's all this management stuff. I hope you keep up with all this because it's so confusing, because if you're a hedge fund manager, I guess you got to know all this stuff. But it to me, it just demonstrates what interventionism all about. I complain the Fed doesn't know what they're doing. I was asked today earlier, what should the Fed do? And Trump is going to appoint 2 new members. And they're going to have control, and which way will they move? Maybe they'll move in your direction. And really, you can't patch up a central bank who's involved in central economic planning. It just doesn't work. A good free market economy doesn't need a central bank. And of course, that's the reason we're suffering the consequences. And we already see what's happening in our economy. People aren't all that happy. And I think a lot of people think we're on the verge of a recession.
Yeah, Paul Martin Foss writes in the Carl Menger Center that, I think his early thrust is absent how it affects the other markets. If you just look at the U.S. market, he says this decision can't be based on any strong economic data because nothing has really changed. On the contrary, maybe. Any sudden improvement in the labor market? No. So on what basis are they making this change now as opposed to last time they met?
And the markets have known that the likelihood of a token little increase in interest rates would occur, and interest rates have gone up as a reflection of that anticipation, but the stocks have skyrocketed. And usually, for years now, it's been the opposite. Oh, if the Fed starts to tighten and interest rates go up, there's problems, and the stocks would go down. So it's interesting to see that didn't happen. Today, though, it might be after the fact. It's been rising for so long. Maybe once this announcement, maybe you'll see a real downturn. It went down a little bit this morning. But the other interesting thing in the markets in this anticipation is, generally speaking, if one country or one central bank leads the way and starts to raise interest rates, they get a little boost in their currency. And the dollar's been very, very strong, abnormally so, but it's been very, very strong. But now with this, an announcement that's coming, I would have thought, well, maybe the dollar will take a little blip upward, but it took a blip downward. So that's why, predicting these markets, anticipation, is completely wrong, because you can't know what people will do, because in spite of all the regulations, there's still a lot of individuals, there's started a lot of businesses, a lot of banks, a lot of opinions being put into the market. And so that's why economic planning fails, because you can't anticipate. Economic planning in the extreme is socialism and communism, and those systems always fall apart. But why I'm concerned about this is that Mises, who was rather astute in economics, he said, well, interventionism ends too. And that certainly is what we have noticed here, especially since the year 2000. I think failure of the central bank, whether it's the NASDAQ bubble, the housing bubble, whether it's the failed bailout with $4 trillion and all these things. And then the pretense right now is things are doing better, and that's why they can raise interest rates, and that doesn't work. But I do want to put up a chart to show what prices are doing. Today, a report came out that producer prices, it was anticipated that the producer prices would rise, minimally, but they rose 0.4%, which is significant. So this chart is to me pretty dramatic about the anticipation of price inflation. We have the monetary inflation. The money's out there. The Fed's done that. Now, where is it going? Going in the stock market, certainly. It's been in the bond market, but bond prices are down. But this one measures the core PPI, year-over-year rate of increases. At the peak bottom there, which is like approximately the beginning of this year, since that whole year of 16, the PPI has been, increasing. And I think that's probably what's going to happen in the future.
And can you explain what that means to those of us who are not?
Well, usually if PPI you look at a producer price index, and that is not the consumer price index. But if the producers' prices are going up, it's estimated that 6, 8, 10 months, depending on what product and what's happening, it will be translated into price increases too. But there are still a lot of price increases going on already. People say, well, the Fed says it's less than 2%, and there isn't any. Well, why? Why are they need a increase in the minimum wage? Well, it's because the minimum wage is small because they lost purchasing power, and they're trying to catch up. So everybody's short of money and purchasing power, and that means there's a lot of inflation that they won't admit to.
In that whole year, you see the prices going up. That looks pretty dramatic.
Yeah, and the big thing is that percentage-wise, it isn't grabbing a lot of attention yet. But if the trend is true, then you're going to hear a lot more about it.
But you were saying at the same time that sales are down. Is that?
Yeah, the retail sales, didn't go up like they were supposed to. So, excuse me.
Yeah, the sales down and prices up. It seems like it should be the opposite. It seems like
that is the case, that they should.
But we have, I think we have another chart on employment, and this is a key issue that's been put up. Has employment improved? Has there been an increase in employment to justify an increase in rates? And if we can put up the employment chart, we can see there are some discrepancies between what the feds are using to measure employment and between what our friends at Shadow Stats, for example, use. John Williams at Shadow Stats, which I think you've gone by for years as a more reliable source, look at that huge discrepancy.
The blue line at the top is produced by Shadow Stats, the private organization, John Williams. And he's saying that unemployment is over 20%.
That's pretty incredible.
Maybe that's why people are unhappy. But people, and then the statistics are false as well, because they might say, well, a lot of new jobs, minimum wage jobs, very low paying jobs, or people taking 2 jobs. The other number that they have to look at is the labor participation rate, which keeps going down. There's less people involved. 95 million people aren't looking for jobs anymore. And I think that explains why people are more unhappy than the government charts show, because things are much worse. Prices are going up more than they thought. And you mentioned the fact about sales. Sales didn't go up like everybody anticipated, that November was a great sales month, but it was 0.1 instead of 0.4. So, and if that continues, that's what they call stagflation. And we know a little bit about that from the 1970s. And stagflation is when the economy is weak, but prices go up. There's such a thing as known as an inflationary depression. Of course, you just go to Zimbabwe or Venezuela. The prices don't, just because it's a weak economy, that doesn't mean prices drop. This is one of the biggest fallacies of our economic planning, is that if you have rising prices, you have a healthy economy. But if you have a healthy economy in capitalism, prices go down.
Well, the thing that I was thinking about when I looked at the chart that you sent me earlier today by email, and I was reading a Wall Street Journal article talking about employment, and this may shock you, but there's a discrepancy between the two perspectives. But it made me wonder, if these great economic central planners are using statistics that are fundamentally false and inaccurate, then how can the outcome be anything other than bad? Here's what the Wall Street Journal said. It was talking about full employment as a determinant of what the Fed may do with interest rates. And he said, there's no real way to measure what full employment should be, so it's a little bit difficult. But he said if the Fed judges that the economy has reached full employment, that could suggest a quicker pace of increases. But what if the stats they're using are the red ones that they use, instead of the ones that you think are more accurate?
Well, that's why it's impossible. They're going to make a mistake, and they shouldn't be in the business of this. And that's why I think eventually people are going to catch on to this. Central banking has lost a lot of credibility. Not only our Federal Reserve, which is the top dog, in central planning and monetary manipulation, because we have the reserve currency, but it's fallible. It doesn't work. They can't know. Sometimes they press me on my interviews. They say, well, tell us what the Fed should do today. Should they raise it or should they raise it? Well, they shouldn't do anything other than get out of the way, which is a major thing. How do you just remove it? But the market would say interest rates should be higher. There's no doubt about it. But, I keep thinking about how's this going to fit in to the next administration.
Yeah.
Right now, I think the next administration is going to need the Fed to try to hold things together. Even though the Fed has been a total failure, everybody concedes that interest rates have been too low for too long, and that when they decided to really inflate, it didn't do any good. But we're embarking on huge deficits. The deficit seems to be the least concern of the people in Congress. It's always been that way in Congress. But now we have an administration coming in that they once in a while will mention, oh, this is horrible, $20 trillion national debt. But they've embarked on bigger spending. The concession is there, and Democrats really behind the scenes love it. We're going to massively increase spending on infrastructure and massively increase spending on militarism. And we're not going to become non-interventionists. The troops aren't coming home. They're going to have a different monster to go after. That's about all. And they need, a lot of weapons. So that's a lot of spending. But that's spending taken out of the hands and the pockets and decision-making of the individuals. And it's all malinvestment. But it's going to increase the debt. I hope we get tax reduction no matter what. Some people think only reduce taxes after you cut spending. No, cut taxes, immediately, and cut the spending is what you need to do. But if the political system, which I believe this is correct, is such where they won't cut spending, they might get a tax break, and they're going to spend money on the wrong things, the deficit's going to go up. Interest rates are going to go up. And we mentioned this yesterday of how significant is, if you move a quarter, $0.50 billion more, what if it goes up $200 billion more just in interest rates? This is going to be horrendous. And the Fed will not be ignored. If they do this spending, and if we have the debt going up, they even under Reagan, they did that. Reagan lowered taxes, raised spending, and the Fed came in. And after '82, the Fed started inflating again. And it has and will revive economy until it gets near the end stage. I think we've been at the end stage, since year 2000. And we were moving. The significant event was 1971, when we had no restraints on the Fed because we de-linked from gold. So since that time, it has just been spending. I believe the pressure will be on. Presidents always have a very strong interest in the Federal Reserve, because if they don't do something that seems to help temporarily for the next day or the next election, then they're told that that they are deliberately doing it. Well, they're deliberately not being able to do it because they don't know what to do. But the pressure will be on, and the Fed will be there. There's no way, if they spend this money and the deficits explode, that the Fed's going to allow the market to take over and say, well, interest rates are less than 1%, and they're going to go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the whole thing would fall apart. So what they have to do is try to balance this by trying to save the economy or sacrifice the dollar. And what they'll do is they will print the money. So the Fed, we know what the Fed will do, but because they're between the rock and a hard place, and it won't work, hasn't been working, that's why I think that the evidence will keep growing that the Fed is dysfunctional, can't do it, and we ought to start seriously thinking about a new monetary system, because if this happens to the dollar, it really messes up, the whole world economy. And that's what Paul Martin was making the point. This just isn't us. We're not in this. This is global. We have the global reserve currency. And what other central banks do is important. Maybe some will become more independent. Maybe there will be an advantage for even the people holding dollars to go to another currency. And it's a mess, but to me, the fundamental flaw is the government's too big, they spend too much money, and they don't care about deficits, because in the short run, you run an economy by giving people what they want, whether it's in the military expenditures or the welfare expenditures. And people are pacified. It's like a drug. It's like an addiction. And believe me, getting out of an addiction is not easy. And it's very similar in economics as it is with a person. And because people feel better if they feed their addiction. And right now, though, we're at a crossroads. Are they going to continue to feed the addiction with more spending and the addiction of new money? Of course, right now, there's a lot of positive feeling, and I think some of it is justified. Trump promises less taxes, less regulations, and maybe a new position on the Federal Reserve, and people are always hopeful. But when you look at these statistics of unemployment, they're much worse. And if you look at the prices, much worse than they will admit. This is a different story. Industrial production is down. It's been down for 15 straight months. And And one of the big things are automobiles are way down on production, and that'll creep off sporting goods, for instance. Now, maybe that's because that is sort of the extra spending. Maybe that's the first thing they cut back on. But I think that I think we're in for tougher times. But I just wish the euphoria would carry over so that we can doctor it up and work our way out of it. But that's the difficulty. That was, of course, my approach in the presidential campaign. There are ways you could work your way out of it, but politically, they don't allow us to do that.
So what would happen if Trump had watched this show and he called you up and said, Ron, I saw your show and I'm spooked. The numbers don't look good. What's the first thing I should do to get out of this?
Well, I would rest well, and I wouldn't buy a plane ticket because somebody would be giving you fake news. that won't happen. But I always was very pleased and flattered when somebody seriously came and asked me a question. And it has to be a serious question, one-on-one, and ask my opinion. And that would happen on rare occasions in the Congress. And I always was very thankful and flattered that somebody would ask, and that would please me that I could discuss it. So anybody who's serious would like my opinion, I'd probably refer them to somebody else that could explain it better than I can, but I would certainly try to help, because I think politics, not the place where you usually have serious discussions. Politics is sort of a bit of demagoguing, and demagoguing is turned into fake news and all that sort of thing. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and I hope you can return to the Liberty Report soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Go check them out. Subscribe on YouTube. Ron Paul Liberty Report. Okay. Now, like I said, we're in a catch-22. The interest rates have been too low for too long. And raising them is something that needed to be done a long time ago, but now we're doing it. And really, it also shows that they shouldn't be in charge of interest rates. That should be a free market thing, because they can't determine what buyers and sellers are going to do as individuals, and they would like to. That comes back to the cashless society. If they can limit large bills, where if things are expensive, well, you don't want to have cash, because you would have to have a wad of, ones and fives. You're not going to be able to carry a $100 bill or a $50 bill, maybe not even a 20, tens, fives, and ones. You can't carry a large amount without, taking up a little room. And that goes back to the cashless society. Everything ends up on a card. Then what they can do, because everything's through the banking system, is then they can go, well, we raised interest rates, a little bit, but the economy's not doing well. Well, of course, it's not going to. Definitely right after you raise interest rates. People need to understand there's hard periods through all of these phases, definitely when they're manipulating the system and have kept interest rates too low for too long. Well, what they can do is go into negative interest rates. And how that would work out is then banks would basically start charging you to keep all this money. And the more negative interest rate we go, the more the bank's going to charge you to hold your money, which in turn makes people want to not hold as much, because there'll be a percent on what you have. So you don't want to hold way too much in the bank. So then what that does is it causes people to spend. It's a philosophy that in theory could work, but in theory dismisses the individual. And people will find ways around it. One way that people have been preparing for this type of system is gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And now that India has been doing this, India has basically become a cashless society. And because of that, silver now is becoming a big thing in India. It's not a big thing yet. It's becoming a big thing. And I think eventually the silver market will recognize that. And so will the gold and other commodities, because it's getting to that point. And I'm not the only person out there saying this. I've heard for, a few different reasons, but this is what I'm seeing come along. And, they're using other countries as these beta countries, and then they're using us as a beta for other reasons. But already you can see a kind of a world order becoming pretty apparent. I want to read this one article. It kind of relates to the economy, but it really also really focuses on how the authoritarian in a bureaucracy how they affect you economically and otherwise. This one, Bureaucracies Are Authoritarian too, Jeffrey Tucker, Foundation for Economic Education, FEE.org. For the eternal 18 months of the presidential election of 2016, the critics of Donald Trump, myself included, said he campaigned as a would-be authoritarian. The term peaked in search according to Google Trends, along with the term fascism. Ron Paul and I, along with many others, called it out as early as 2015. And as the campaign intensified, we came to share this criticism with much of the mainstream media, which rallied around this view as the most effective criticism of Trump. We all found ourselves in the implausible situation of agreeing with critics with whom we had otherwise disagreed for many years. Trump himself had the impression almost daily for a full year, dropping the traditional Republican rhetoric about cutting government and upholding free enterprise while defending torture, internment, religious tests at the border, boycott against companies who oppose him, hinting at the need to silence the press with libel law, and announcing that he alone could make the nation secure. Now, remember that part right there about libel law. That'll come into play here later in the broadcast. But remember how he was one of those that was talking about, well, the main person that was talking about, people that talk out against me, say things that I think tarnish my image, use libel laws to come after them. They're saying bad things and it's not true. And when you have someone that's going to be president and possibly could try to attempt to use executive order to accomplish something like that, to silence opposition. And if he actually does something like that, you might be seeing the makings of a dictator, I believe. Someone that would do that, someone that might be able to spur that civil unrest that I believe they've been trying to spur for a while since um, Occupy Wall Street and with all the race riots. And I think they see with Trump that that's someone that they might be able to accomplish that with. Whether he's a willing participant or not is another thing. Says here, Trump himself had the impression almost daily for a full year, dropping the traditional Republican rhetoric about cutting government and upholding free enterprise while defending torture and internment, religious tests at the border, boycotts against companies who oppose him, hinting at the need to silence the press for libel law, and announcing that he alone could make the nation secure. The words freedom and liberty hardly crossed his lips. Here was his biggest vulnerability, and the critics slowly began to catch on. Strongman became a watchword President Obama got into the act, declaring at the Democratic National Convention, "We are not a fragile or frightful people. Our power doesn't come from some self-declared savior promising that he alone can restore order. We don't look to be ruled." Everyone knew exactly to whom he was referring. It was devastating. A campaign sensitive to criticism. Now, I want to get back to that. When Obama said that we're not someone that's looking to be ruled, he's talking about by one person. He doesn't mind, organizations ruling, and his people that are helping others out, really controlling them. You are a organized dictatorship. It's not a one-person dictatorship. It's an organization dictating, whether it be corporations or these other type of organizations they create. It really comes down to you think you're not being a dictator. You're helping people. That's not what dictators do. Well, yeah, you dictate to others that they must help others out. A true free society, guess what? If you want to be some great successful person, you can pursue that. If you just want to be, just a little worker bee with no, nothing past basic knowledge, that's fine. Great. You're a good person in society, or even you're just kind of a, little hermit, and you can be a little bit of a a-hole. You're living your life as you choose, as long as you're not abridging other people's rights. But he thinks the only way to have some type of authoritarian or dictatorial rule is a single dictator. I think you're wrong. But it says here, a campaign sensitive to criticism following those attacks, the Trump campaign began to change. It was very late in the campaign, September 2016, when the idea of deregulation became a major part of Trump's stump speech. His shift culminated in his October 23rd, 2016 Gettysburg speech. Here was the speech where his most passionate critics among free market partisans began to take a second look. When you compare his themes to what I first heard at Freedom Fest in 2015, it is a world of difference as much as there is between a tyrant and a liberator. While it is true that Trump never gave up his dangerous calls to put limits on outsourcing and for new taxes on imports, among other counterproductive protectionist strategies, and this continues to this day. The tone of his campaign took a different direction, away from its dark beginnings to a more concrete idea of getting government off people's backs. I'll leave it to the political historians to document and explain this change in tone from freewheeling authoritarian to defender of the deregulated marketplace. What is an influx of new advisors from the free market wing of the Republican Party? Was it a shift inspired by polls? My own theory is that Trump began to realize he could actually win. He looked for um, expertise and found few people who backed his centralizing approach, but plenty with strong free market values. Even today, he seems isolated in his call for economic nationalism in a time when global commerce is more robust and woven into our lives than ever before. Gotta remember, people that can't afford much buy things at Walmart, which are imports for the most part. You can read the rest of the article, FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Education, and that was by Jeffrey Tucker. Bureaucracies are authoritarian too. Check it out. Now, I have another article here I want to get to. Reason.com. Forget Keith Olbermann, who Rand Paul and Justin Amash are leading the resistance to Trump. Donald Trump is going to become president next January. Sorry, Hamilton electors. And I'll get to that here in a minute. And he'll be working with a Republican majority in both houses of Congress. From a libertarian perspective, there are some grounds for cautious optimism, but there are more reasons to be deeply worried by all this. Trump sounded distinctly authoritarian, notes during the campaign, and he's no fan of free speech, free trade, and anything remotely resembling open borders. On foreign policy, he's bounced back and forth from straightforward denunciations of 21st century interventions into the Middle East and North Africa as terrible, and bragging that he'd bombed the shit out of ISIS, which Trump will show up on January 20th. Who knows? His tax plan would make national debt massively bigger, and he's hardly a physical hawk either. His daughter is already making calls to push a taxpayer-funded maternity leave program, and his infrastructure plans, vague as they are, have boondoggle written all over them. So who is going to stand up to him? The Dems are a sorry lot as a group. Whether they backed Bernie or were with Hillary, they put up no serious resistance to foreign policy disaster under George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and few of them gave a shit about civil liberties. Too busy pushing for higher national minimum wage during a crap economy and lobbying for student loan relief for the relatively small number of in-debt brats of a middle class too dumb or insecure to send their kids to relatively inexpensive state schools. I guess, and the Republicans. Come on. Beta dogs such as Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are already cowed by the Donald and puckered lower lip. How many sad sacks in Congress were like Utah's Jason Chaffetz, who cried never Trump for like 15 minutes before tweeting on October 26th, I will not defend or endorse at real Donald Trump, but I am voting for him. Most Republicans, bless their appointed little heads, just want to roll with a winner. They like being good little boys and less often girls. They'll go along with much of what Trump wants, especially if when it comes to Muslim bashing and bombing, baiting immigrants and taking it to those rapist Mexicans who stopped coming here around 2007 because their own country is a better place for them given what America has become. Lord knows that the last time the party of Lincoln ran the White House and Congress, things went off the rails like a crazy train, at least when it comes to the size, scope, and spending of the federal government. Each of those things grew exponentially. And here we are. And with nothing to show for that binge other than a debt hangover and the size of Mount Rushmore. With that as a backdrop, here's some good news via Politico. Libertarians emerging as Trump resistance. Katie Gluick points specifically to Senator Rand Paul and Representative Justin Amash in her piece, among other elected officials, but gives props to the larger liberty movement as well. That's groups such as Reason Cato Campaign for Liberty, which grew out of Ron Paul's presidential aspirations, and more. One of the reasons why such groups are in a good place is because we put principles before politics. The GOP doesn't exist to do anything particular as much as it exists to fill seats in Congress and elsewhere. Libertarians who disagree even on who should be considered libertarian agree that politics and policy is too important to be left to the folks elected to Congress and the White House. Consider Amash first. He never endorsed Trump, and he's not about to put up with the demagoguery. Here's a tweet from him. Nobody should burn the American flag, but our Constitution secures our right to do so. No president is allowed to burn the First Amendment. When Trump started leading about slapping 35% tariffs on goods produced by companies who outsource jobs, Amash responded this would be a 35% tax on all Americans, a tax that especially hurts low-income families. Maybe the slogan should be Make America Venezuela. Here's a blast from Rand Paul about Trump's flirtation with naming former UN Ambassador John Bolton to a big job at the State Department. My efforts to insert myself into the public debate are not to oppose Donald Trump. They are to support what Donald Trump said in the campaign, Paul said, speaking at the time when Bolton was under more serious consideration to lead the State Department. Though Paul has reiterated his opposition to Bolton in any role since then. Regime change made us less safe, and the Iraq war allowed for chaos. I agree on those things Trump said. I would just hate for, at the very beginning, that those things he professed on the campaign trail to be diminished or besmirched by having someone in charge of the State Department who doesn't agree with Donald Trump. Paul endorsed Trump and voted for him, but like Amash, Paul is drawing lines in the sand about what he will or won't support. In an interview earlier this week, Paul told me that he could never support diplomats or appointees who had failed to learn the lessons of the Iraq War, the Libyan intervention, and what's unfolding in Syria now. The key insight, he said, was that regime change almost always leads to something worse than we had. He also stressed that he will refuse to vote for any budget plan that never achieves balance, which the current Republican budget blueprint fails to do pretty spectacularly. This is what real resistance looks like, fighting members of your own team when they stray from the principles they claim to support and on which they were elected. I don't agree with Amash and Paul on everything, maybe not even most things, but I know that I'm happy as hell to see these guys brawling not with a bunch of loser Democrats over phony issues, but with their own kind over very important issues, and especially basic principles about the role and limits of government. You can read the rest of that at reason.com. Now, that when it comes to this whole electoral thing, we heard that term Hamilton electorals. They're trying to get the electors in the electoral college to vote against Trump. Well, here in Indiana, this is actually someone I work with in another company, and he just happens to also be an elector for the electoral college in my county, which we work in a whole other county and city together. He talks about getting emails and basically being pushed to vote against Trump, but he has come out and said that he's going to vote the way the people voted. That's just how he's going to vote. But we've seen the left and some of the never Trumpers that are just still holding on, going against us. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I think this is kind of a hypocritical thing because these are a lot of the same people that were up in arms when Trump said, it depends on what the results are, whether I'm going to accept them. But now the Democrats and never Trumpers are, the same people that were in uproar when he said that are now doing exactly what they were in uproar that they're afraid he would do. But let me go ahead and see if this clip's going to play here from Wayne.com. Noble County GOP chair talks about being an electoral college voter. That's here in Indiana, Noble County, Indiana. Wayne.com. Let's see if this works.
College votes next week, and people across the country have ramped up their efforts to convince members to vote against President-elect Donald Trump.
The chairman of Noble County's Republican Party says he's gotten thousands of emails, some of them even threatening. News Channel 15's Angelica Robinson joins us now with his story.
Heather and Brett, Randy Kirkpatrick says he's received more than 77,000 emails, most of them asking him to vote for Hillary Clinton. Others just want him to vote for anyone but Donald Trump. It's constant.
It looks like an email comes through every minute of every day of every week of every month.
Since Election Day, the chairman of the Noble County Republican Party, Randy Kirkpatrick, says emails, countless phone calls, and letters all asking him not to vote for Donald Trump.
And some of them had a very good story on why they thought I should change it. Some called me names.
Kirkpatrick is serving as Indiana elector for the first time. He and 10 others will officially vote Monday for President-elect Donald Trump.
My story is I live in Indiana. I'm an elector for Indiana. Trump won the electoral vote and the popular vote in Indiana. My vote is going for Trump in both cases.
According to political analyst Mike Wolf, the push to change electors' minds isn't unusual, especially in close elections.
The fact that she won by 2% more vote than he does has been members of the Democratic Party probably upset and looking to kind of hit reset on whatever they can do to try and change the result.
But it probably won't happen.
It's unlikely to reach enough people in enough of the key states to make a difference to flip the Electoral College.
Which is the case for Kirkpatrick.
I don't care how many emails I get, how many letters I get or phone calls. I will do the job I was asked to do.
Indiana's electors head to the State House Monday morning to vote. Angelica Robinson, News Channel 15.
And, it's one of those things that it comes down to, like he said, that he's voting the way the people voted, both popular and electoral college. So it's one of those things that, why should he change it? Well, the left now, claiming that, well, Russia interfered and that allows him to change his vote. Well, there's no evidence that they, hacked in and actually changed the results. And that's not even what they're arguing. They're arguing that they put out fake news. You mean propaganda? Like our government, our mainstream media does. What's the difference? Our mainstream media was hyping Hillary up when she barely had a following, while Trump was filling stadiums. Same thing when Ron Paul was running and filling stadiums back in 07, 08. And we run a candidate like McCain after we had Bush and thinking he's going to get elected. It's and now that they're claiming fake news, and now they're going after alternative media, which they're trying to coin anybody that's a libertarian or conservative, that's alternative and small media, alt-right. That way they could try to, coin that for the racist and fake news and Russian, and it's getting out of control. The whole fake news narrative is being pushed really hard. We have social media threatening to censor, which we already know that many of them have in their own ways already censored stuff. Many of us have known about this since 06, 07, 08, dealing with Ron Paul campaigning for him, whether it was independent campaigning or actual part of the Ron Paul campaign. I'm trying to find this clip I had. I'm sorry, guys. Fans kicking on probably in the background. Which is surprising because it's a little bit chilly here. Single digit negative with windshield. Don't know about you guys, but it's pretty cold. Pretty cold. I'm going to play part of this. I'm not going to play the whole thing. But actually, I'm going to point people to one from Stefan Molyneux too, and then I'm going to play this other one. Because now we have Facebook coming out, which many of us have dealt with a lot of censorship on Facebook and other sites, whether it's a bug, whether it's because trolls flagging. Many have been censored on Facebook from sharing their beliefs and their ideas, even on their own page. And it seems to target certain groups. And that's, I think, what makes it kind of real sketchy about the whole issue. You know, if it was something where people across, like, you know, the Hillary, or let's even go back to, you know, the Ron Paul, the, you know, McCain, Obama, Hillary, back, you know, 08 election. Why weren't the McCain supporters, the Obama supporters, the Hillary supporters being censored like the Ron Paul supporters were? Why weren't the, you know, other candidates being censored like Ron, you know, the followers, people sharing stuff on their own timeline? Because I've had many people that literally were sharing stuff on their own timeline and were censored because it was all Ron Paul stuff. But I want to play this clip. This was Stefan Molyneux, Facebook's fake news censorship campaign. And he also talks to Alex Jones on here. Let's go ahead and get into Stefan Molyneux. This is someone that we have very different opinions and views on certain things. But at times we do agree on things. But he really gets in the Facebook fake news campaign thing that they have going right now. And I really want to cover that right after this.
Radio, I hope you're doing well. So I had a conversation with Alex Jones, the host of InfoWars, which you can find, of course, at Infowars.com, one of the most powerful voices in the alternative media. We were talking about a general topic, but he had some very specific and powerful things to say about what's happening to InfoWars with regards to censorship and Facebook and other entities. And I didn't want to wait to get the information out. So I'm going to give you the excerpt of the interview here. The full interview, of course, we will be putting out next week, the stuff which we're not including here. But I thought this stuff was important enough that you should really get a chance to eyeball it and come to your own conclusions and do more research on this topic. It's very powerful and a little alarming, to put it frankly, what is happening in America with this question of allowing some fairly lefty outlets to define what is fake news, what is real news, what is legitimate, and what is not. It used to be the marketplace of ideas that would decide that. But now it seems to be that there are particular entities and algorithms, neither of which I think are going to be particularly objective, that are going to try and filter out news considered to be fake or manufactured or questionable or untrustworthy and so on. That is not a very good approach to journalism. That is not a very good approach to the marketplace of ideas. And as you can imagine, Mr. Jones has something to say about it. I guess it's been a fairly big year for you, Alex, a fairly important year, a fairly transitional year. Would that be a fair way to characterize it?
You always say it better than I do. This is Twilight Zone. I mean, we've seen the collapse of the megastate, at least the collapse in confidence in the megastate in Europe with what's happening with Brexit, but also Italy voting to not expand Euro control. We've seen the Euro say, oh, we'll just march our EU army into your countries if you try to leave. How's that sound? And now they're telling England, we don't care if you try to have a Brexit. We're just going to keep you in. Well, again, they're showing the fact that they're tyrants. And here, Zuckerberg obviously came out in the latter part of December and announced, I'm going to have Snopes and basically the UN just like they have censorship in Europe, decide what's real news and what's not. And we're going to, quote, bury fake news. They say InfoWars is chief amongst it. The Twitter sphere, of course, is alive with the news that the Washington Post and others are calling for Trump to be banned from Twitter. The 45th president of the United States saying he's a bully. And so now we're really seeing the ultimate push to restrict free speech. It's actually happening, and it's being done Chinese communist style by dubbing it fake news. It's quite remarkable.
Well, and given how much the mainstream media has gotten not only wrong is an insult to the word wrong. It's like the complete opposite of correct. You know, they called the Hillary election wrong. There's so many stories that they've gotten completely wrong, and so much manipulation and so much false reporting going on, that this really is, you know, the old analogy of putting the fox in charge of the hen house, giving the mainstream media the power to determine what is real news. How about you let the market of ideas figure out what is real news? How about we invite all voices to the table and see who tells the most compelling story with the most facts?
Well, sure. And again, it's the perfect storm that we've talked so much about. You've got big central governments, left or right, losing credibility, collapsing. We also have the media with almost no viewers, the dinosaur legacy, true fake news, caught with fake polls, not just here, but in Europe. The poll showed Merkel's party was going to win again, but by 15 points. Her party lost. Same thing in Italy. The poll said that those that were for EU expansion, it was going to win. It lost. Same thing here with Trump. And so we also see the WikiLeaks, I think the MVP of the last year, exposing with the whistleblowers the fact that it's all scripted, all controlled, media members saying, I want to lie to the public. I'm a hack. Tell me what to say, Hillary. This group that has zero credibility is now trying to say everything but us has to be licensed, has to be shut down, has to be monitored, has to be filtered. And, oh, by the way, everybody but us are really Russian agents. The Russian agents made Hillary lose. The FBI made Hillary lose. Everybody made Hillary lose but Hillary and the establishment that thought that they could run Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton again. And both of them, early on, they had big scientific polls where Hillary was in single digits, so was Jeb Bush, and people like Donald Trump were way ahead because, yeah, people are sick of the same old establishment, but they are so disconnected with their butlers and their palaces that they thought the same old bull would work. The problem is now they're still in control of the central government for another 35 days or 30 days or whatever it is till Trump gets in, and they're openly now trying to overthrow the election. They're openly calling for his assassination. They're calling for coup d'etats. Then I come out and say, oh, look, Nancy Pelosi's daughter wants a coup. And she goes on Fox and goes, Alex Jones is threatening me. I'm getting death threats saying I want to overturn the election when she's saying she wants to. So they've gotten so delusional, Stefan. I don't know what you call this. You probably have a term for it. They've gotten so delusional that they're contradicting themselves in their own sentences. It's total la-la land.
Well, I think with the mainstream media, the real mind's muscularity resides in what is called the alternative media, or another name, the honest media, the media who's not bought and controlled by special interest groups. You know, if you're a salmon and you're kind of swimming with the current, you don't need to move that much, and you think you're a great swimmer because the current is carrying you. And there has been a sort of leftist momentum in the mainstream media that has made them soft. You know, they haven't had to tolerate different opinions. They have a kind of unisphere of echo chamberness in their own offices. They don't hire people who challenge them. They don't get guests on who really challenge them. So they've kind of gotten lazy. And now that they're getting pushback from a more muscular media, from a media that's had to fight tooth and nail to get its audiences and has sharpened its skills thereby, it is like looking, you know, like there's a boxer sometimes who's, you know, way past his prime and hasn't worked out for a while. And then you've got some lean, hungry person with ripped abs and blurring arms just getting in there. And I think the media is freaking out because they've gotten so soft and complacent that all they can do is lash out with threats of censorship and government action and so on, rather than engage the alternative media in a substantive debate.
Well, I'm definitely going to play this on my show as soon as this comes out. Again, you've always got the best allegories or parallels. That's it. A fish that doesn't have to swim upstream just kind of waddles around. There's food laying around. It's in its own kind of outer space world with no gravity. But those of us that had to fight tooth and nail for decades and did it because we truly cared, already had our own businesses, as I know you did, were already successful. You know, I mean, I was already successful in what I was doing, but I was so angry about what was happening, I got involved. And certainly I had rough edges, but it didn't matter. The reality and the basic authenticity of it resonated with people. who had been made to feel like they were all alone. So you're exploding, I'm exploding. By every metric, I'm very heartened to see hundreds of prominent free thinkers of every race, color, creed, color, persuasion, but we get the general fact that the elite is authoritarian, no matter what label they give it. They're out of control, and we've been swimming upstream so long that we're kicking their butt. They're now having to swim upstream. They're panicking, and I watched last night 3 networks, MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, and also Fox, but they didn't do it officially as a network, say, we're all for the First Amendment, but Alex Jones is dangerous. It's time to shut him down. Now, I'd been told by an inside source that morning that Pelosi was calling an emergency meeting saying, I want him arrested. He's yelling fire in a theater. And I didn't learn that they put something out that I threatened her daughter, which I didn't do. Hours later, 5 hours later, she goes on Cavuto and says, I'm scared. Alex wants people to kill me. I mean, this is the level they've hit where you go, hey, lady, you're forming a coup against voters. This isn't right. Meanwhile, Democrats were calling it a coup in newspapers. She goes, he wants to hurt me, violent, violent. And on the channels, they kept saying, Jones is calling for violence. Jones is going to cause violence. They're the ones that have been in every major newspaper I've seen, LA Times, New York Times, Time Magazine, Washington Post, saying, kill Donald Trump. I mean, everybody saw that. I'm not saying kill anybody. And then they're projecting onto us. That's what's so crazy is I've never seen such delusional projection by them. And I mean, I got to tell you, it's crazy to see them saying, we are going to censor fake news. It's going to start now. We're going to bury InfoWars. You're not going to be able to get to his site. And Google and Facebook have messages now on Chrome and others saying, this is a fraudulent, dangerous site. Don't go here. China is coming to America. But meanwhile, they lost the election, but they're saying ban the president from the internet. These people are like employees that run your office. Say you leave for 6 months. You come back and they tried a hostile takeover, basically. I mean, this is just, let me ask you this question. Where do you see this going? Or A, do you agree with what I just said, Stefan? And B, where does it go? Because it's the madness of King George. It was the insanity of King George III that finally led to the colonies breaking away. It seems like that's when the elite finally implode, like Nero, is when they go completely nuts.
Well, nobody seems like a dictator if you agree with them. Right? I mean, if you're very pro-Stalin, Stalin doesn't mind having you around. And so because so many people have been so compliant with the myths of the mainstream media for so long, the mainstream media has shown its benevolent face. It's sort of pat on the head. We don't have to be too extreme. We don't have to be too crazy because everyone kind of we control the narrative. Everyone kind of agrees with that. And we can very easily demonize people who oppose us. With the rise of the internet and the rise of the alternative media, there is now substantive and weighty and muscular disagreement with the mainstream media, and the tyrant is revealed when you disagree. As long as you agree with the tyrant, he looks benevolent. When you disagree in a substantive way with the tyrant, the mask comes off and you see the tyranny underneath. And I think that the disagreement that the alternative media is helping to bring to focus and to bear on the mainstream media and this deconstruction of false narratives in real time. You know, the false narratives used to take months or years, or sometimes it would wait for like 20 years for the papers to come out about what happened. You know, like all of the Soviet spies in the State Department in the 1950s. It took till the Venona Project in the 1990s to decrypt all of these Soviet cables and reveal just how many Soviet spies were there. It takes decades sometimes for now. And then who cares, right? Who cares about the Gulf of Tonkin incident so far after the fact?
But now we're learning in real time. So then what do you predict happens to them next? I mean, they're delusional. They've dug in. They're trying to start wars. Obama, it's just weeks from being out of office. He's sending massive troops to the Russian border. It just seems like they're going crazy.
Well, they're going to double down. This is what crazy people do. You know, when you confront a false narrative, they double down. They don't seem to have the capacity to look in the mirror and say, where did we go wrong and what can we do better? Now, of course, if you're market facing, then you have to do that every day. Every day I'm like, well, how can I do my show better? And how can I improve things and so on? And that's how you succeed and grow as well. So they're going to double down, but they can't win because reality and the dissemination of information, facts, truth, reason, and evidence are all on the side of those who oppose them.
And if there was ever a launch pad for it, historically, they can't get a true tyranny in place. You're absolutely right from my view. But then therein lies the danger of the immovable object, comes into force with the unstoppable force. What happens then? This isn't a Soviet Union that came out of a czarist oppression. So then what happens if they're trying old Soviet or old fascist style takeovers right out of the book against a modern, sophisticated civilization? they've got a bunch of old, addled weirdos like Nancy Pelosi and George Soros running it, and they are calling the shots. That sounds pretty explosive and dangerous, where they don't seem to get it and are moving forward with a 19th or 20th century authoritarianism.
Well, of course, the reality, Alex, and this is why people were surprised that I was very pro-Trump, but the reality, as you know, is that this would have happened whether or not Trump had gotten in. It's just that it's a whole lot better with Trump getting into office for the alternative media. They were going to do this crackdown because they know how close. If it had been a close election, they'd have known that it would be close because of that.
You're dead on. Drudge came to my studio, to this studio a year ago, and said that with the Supreme Court justice, but with others, they're shutting it down in 2016. They're handing it over to the UN. They're going to bring in German-style censorship like they have in the EU. And he was upset. He came here just to warn the world. And now Hillary, as you know, a month before the election, she said, we're going to shut down the alt-right, her definition, as if we're right-wing. We're the true liberals, in my view. We're going to shut down the alt-right as soon as I get in. Well, now Trump got in. They're still moving forward. That's what I'm saying, even though, I guess they're going to try to keep him out of office.
Well, I'm sure that there are certain elements that would like that, but that would tear the country apart. I mean, that would be the end of the republic. I think if you can't have a peaceful transition of power, that's it. I mean, then who knows what happens after that? But it would.
Could that be what they're planning? I mean, could that be what they're planning?
I think that I think there are certain elements that would very much like that. But I just don't think that there's a way that they can do it. There's too much alternative information out there. There are too many sources of facts for them to be able to do the steamroller, which they normally do, which is, here's the narrative, we all agree in it, and anyone who disagrees with us is crazy. That narrative, that whole approach to the dissemination of truth doesn't work anymore because there are so many voices out there with actual facts and evidence backing up the statements.
I mean, even Clapper, even Loretta Lynch admits, okay, no real hacking. Okay, the Russian media was somewhat pro-Trump. But what about the Chinese media pro-Hillary? What about the EU media pro-Hillary? The UK media, almost totally state-run pro-Hillary. The Mexican media, the Canadian media, almost totally pro-Hillary. All the major media here, almost completely pro-Hillary. The big Google, Facebook, almost all from the top down pro-Hillary. What about the Chinese admittedly giving her $300 million? Or the Saudi prince bragging he gave her 20% of her money? That's all illegal. She got away with it. So what if the Russians had their finger on the scale, which there's no evidence? They've got, 20 gold bricks over here with her. The Russians put half a brick over here. The foreign involvement, the illegals voting. See, that's the logic. Everybody inherently knows that. And so what if we're being friendly with Russia? Russia is progressing into a freer civilization. We've been going the other way. But let me ask you this. What do you make, then, of this huge burgeoning liberty movement waking up worldwide? Why do you think it's happening, Stefan? A, and let me ask this question, B, how would you, because I'm looking to shoot a video of my own today, how would you label the year of 2016, and then what do you predict for 2017? If this is the year that the Renaissance came from underground and exploded out into beautiful view with all its colors and all its banners and all its choices and all its true liberalism, then what is next year?
Well, if you've ever been in a relationship with a very, very attractive woman that you kind of suspect might be a little crazy, but you're not sure. And after a while, she's keyed your car, she's set fire to your pets, and she's spray painted your apartment. At some point, the evidence accumulates that bad, crazy stuff is happening, and it doesn't matter how attractive the woman is. You've got to get out there and adopt a new name and change your hairstyle. So the promise, of course, that has been put forward with collectivism, with oligarchical, hierarchical collectivism, the promise has been surrender your rights and we'll make your life wonderful. Surrender your power to us, have more and more layers of bureaucracy and everything will be wonderful. We're just one more statute book away from paradise. As the evidence has accumulated that this is incredibly corrosive and destructive to our freedoms, we remain an empirical mammalian life form. You can only hide the truth for so long, and the internet is putting out all of this wonderful meme warfare, which deconstructs nonsense arguments in one funny picture, and that is incredibly concentrated. So the fantasy is unraveling. The facts are coming in counter to the narrative, and the reality is, you're in a sailboat. The wind starts to blow the other way. There's only so much you can do. So 2017 is going to be a year of, I hope it remains a civil, verbal battle of ideas. And the left, of course, I think has lost the battle of ideas decades ago after the fall of the Soviet Union and the horrors that were revealed under Chairman Mao's communism and the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. They lost the argument for collectivism and central planning decades ago, which is why they started stuffing the ballots with illegal immigrants.
Exactly. How could anybody say Venezuela or Cuba or the old Russia or China is a good thing? I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, basically, communism is like you turn an aquarium over a ferret and it scrabbles at the glass, and everyone's saying, oh, he loves it in there. It's beautiful. It's like he'll chew his way through the glass if he can. So the evidence is in, and people are beginning to make their decisions, and people are realizing what treasures have been left behind, what has been lost, and what is in danger of being lost forever, which are basic Western freedoms. And there is a strong reaction to that. And there is a strong, I wasn't sure whether there was going to be any blowback from the extreme leftist agenda that's been pursued by academia, by the media, by Hollywood and so on for decades. But human beings, you've got to rely on their resilience and their bounce back. They're seeing the facts and they're pushing back hard.
Sure, people are adapting and overcoming. I mean, I totally agree. And with epigenetics and instincts, you can take, any animal, especially mammals, and have it born in a cage. It comes out, still has basic instincts. So no matter what they do, was an allegory, of course, in the movie The Island, where they're clones and they're kept in the subterranean deal to be harvested their organs. But it's almost like metaphysically or virally, they pick up the memories, race memories of the human species and break out of it. And so that's what we're seeing here. And I think, really, I don't say this to be positive, it's true. I'm not being a cheerleader. I really see desperateness in the elite, and I think their desperateness, like a drowning person, is only accelerant on the fires of liberty. So I see 2017 as being explosive. I see it as the critical year. If people think 2016 was key, I think 2017 is going to be king.
It is. Everything has been a lead up to this next year. We are poised, I think, as a movement to achieve our goals, but it is going to be in the face of its strenuous resistance. And the fact that Trump is in the White House lends an enormous potential to the cause, which I think to take some happiness in. But it is going to be a strenuous and challenging time. And I, for one, I welcome that. I mean, if you don't like being a boxer, don't be a boxer. But I've been training for this for 30 years, and I am ready to roll.
I agree with you. There's two different types of so-called pseudo-liberals I run into here in Austin, Texas, which is a lot of classical, old-fashioned are good people. They come up and go, no, I'm for Trump. I get what you say, long-haired hippies that own bike shops, you name it. They're nice people. They're anti-war. They get all the common sense stuff. They're nice liberals. But then there's like these younger, more trendy. They're really angry. They're pissed. And they're so committed to the lie, they're now panicking because they want to laugh at everyone and laugh at free market. They're delusional. They think they're part of the power structure. I mean, it's like a kid imagining they're a superhero, even though they're not even part of the power structure. And they're delusional. But now I have them coming up, cussing at me in restaurants, yelling at me on the street, coming up and showing me a gun on their side and threatening me. This happened 3 weeks ago, going, F you, Alex Jones, and F Donald Trump. And I'm just like, I'm sorry he wants to cut your taxes. I don't know what's happened to them. They have turned into like brown shirts.
Well, we have a generation largely raised without fathers. We have a generation that has not been exposed to rigorous and critical thinking. We have a generation that has been stripped of the nobility of their history and replaced with bottomless vats of self-loathing about white Christian Western civilization. And they are cut adrift and they are moreless and they are panicking. If you take an animal and remove its senses, it tends to lash out at everything. And when you take a human being and remove from them the capacity to reason and the capacity to feel pride in the gifts that they have inherited from hardworking ancestors, they tend to lash out randomly. And of course, it is our hope that we can sort of capture, give them the hug of reason and set them on the right path. But it is
I totally
what
agree.
happens when things misfire.
Men seem panicked and scrabbling in all directions. The women seem panicked and scared, and they keep getting directed by the central government and central media, and each step makes it worse, but they become more doubled down into the cult, kind of like a Nigerian scam. You get an email saying, send me $1,000 to Prince of Boo Boo, and you're going to get 100,000. Sorry, Prince of Boo Boo only needs 5,000 more. You're going to get $1 million. And then, you're going to get a meeting with Prince of Boo Boo. You got to send him, 10,000 more. And then you find out it was a Nigerian scam. I've known people 10 years after the scam started, a decade ago. This started like 20 years ago, who get mad at me, coworkers, and they go, you're just mad I'm getting $1 million from Prince Boo Boo or whatever the name is. And I'm like, no, it's fake. And they, even after they get ripped off, they won't admit I was warning them about a scam. So how do you help people that are so committed to a delusion that they never admit they're wrong? When I'm wrong, I admit it all the time. I don't understand this thing being committed to your mistakes.
Well, have children these days and young adults, have they ever developed the emotional capacity to deal with being wrong and correcting themselves? You know, everyone gets a medal. Everyone, all competition is, you never have to lose. You never have to admit faults. You're never going to get an F. You're never going to be held back. And there's no threat of losing the progress, social promotion, they call it. Let's just keep you going. So when children grow up being shielded from the consequences of failure, they don't know how to emotionally handle being wrong, being incorrect, and having to change course. And so they lash out like toddlers in temper tantrums. And of course, they're bigger than toddlers and they can vote. So it's a little bit more risky.
Well, exactly. I have 3 children, and, you know, you want to spoil them. I mean, I know my parents were nice, but I thought that was mean not giving me money when I wanted something. I had to go get a job at 12 to buy a new bike. Yeah, that was mean. But then I think back, all the fun stuff I found at jobs and girlfriends and learned how to do things, and all the cool old people that showed me how to fix boats. It was like, wow, they were getting me out of the house. You know, like, don't be in the house. Don't watch TV. Get the hell out of here. Go mow the yard. And then my kids are great, but I spoiled them up until a point, and then they kind of threw fits when I got back on them and took stuff away and made them work for everything. But then they're so much happier and now enjoy doing things. And of course, I'm saying simple things everybody knows, except a lot of modern people, their parents never did that. I know a lot of people that are 25, 30, 40 don't even know how to make food. They don't even know how to make their beds. They just trendy around bitching all day. And I'm like, wow, like you said, these are like adult toddlers.
Yeah, I guess the concept of laundry is garbage bags full of clothes you drop off at mom's place. So that is the chat that we had, part of the chat that we have. We'll be releasing more from that interview next week.
Stefan Molyneux on YouTube. Check him out. Subscribe. Now, the fake news, and say what you want about Alex Jones, but Judge did show up on his broadcast live, surprised him, talking about, you know, he had a Supreme Court justice tell him that, you know, they're coming after free speech. And we're seeing that now with the whole fake news. And now you're getting browsers basically with, you know, your pop-ups and all that. You know, this website's not, you know, a legitimate website or whatever to silence alternative media. And again, say what you want about Alex Jones, but he with Roger Stone being an insider with Trump, accurately talked about things that would happen, that actually happened. Again, I was a fan of Alex or Trump, and especially Alex supporting Trump. But, you know, that's his own prerogative. But, you know, he accurately, you know, called a lot of this out. Drudge was on there, called out that they were going to start going after alternative media. Then you start seeing the alt-right, which I warned against, you know, labeling yourself that, which AMTV end up kind of labeling themselves that, along with others labeling AMTV that, now and labeling them as fake news, labeling InfoWars as fake news, and you know, the list will continue to grow. This is also the same, you know, stuff that we've seen when Southern Poverty Law Center started calling, you know, We Are Change and Oath Keepers domestic terrorists, basically. They are targeting, and it seems like now that they are ready to make the move. Now, there was a term that Trump used and said that he would start enforcing and basically expanding, sort of protect his name, basically. It's kind of how it came across. But, you know, of course, he won't say that. But libel laws. They basically want to make it where if you're going to say anything negative, you better be able to prove it. You can't have an opinion on it. You can only state facts if it's negative. Of course, they are not going to go after you if you state a positive opinion about them. But negative opinion, well, you can't have a negative opinion. Only negative can be fact. And you better believe that they're going to do that. I have one more thing covering fake news, then I want to kind of cover the last portion of the broadcast, the Russia portion of the whole fake news, hacking, and all that. But I did want to cover one last one, and this one is from We Are Change. And this is how to fight back against real fake news and Facebook. Excuse me. Here we go.
Just officially declared war on the truth and dissent, putting in the final nail in the coffin for freedom of speech on their platform, ushering outright censorship. Is this an exaggeration? No, sadly it's not. But in the mainstream media terms, it's translated as Facebook will combat fake news. As we know, a few days ago, they announced that users could go on their platform and report fake news. But now we are getting to see who will be behind the scenes, behind the curtains, deciding what is fake news and what is not. Now, before we get into this video, I think I actually have an idea where we could all combat this, where we could all have an epic troll on them and actually come out on top. But first, let's get to the news here. Facebook announced that mainstream media companies like the Washington Post, ABC News, and admitted liberal leftist blog Snoops will be deciding what is fake news or not. This is mainstream media companies that in recent Gallup polls have about a 30% trust rating with the American people. They have a 6% great trust with the American people. 3 in 4 people don't trust the mainstream media for a very specific reason. ABC, which is going to be one of the companies which are going to be calling out fake news, they're the ones who still have Brian Williams on, the most discredited journalist in recent history in our current times, who had to resign in shame after putting out fake news of him being shot with RPGs, lying to you. And these are the people who are going to be deciding that. The Washington Post, who disgracefully named We Are Change on their list of so-called fake Russian propaganda news sites in a McCarthyist blacklist propaganda piece that they had to retract and apologize for. I mean, and then Snoops. I mean, you can't get more ridiculous. Admitted leftist liberal website owners. The owners that are admitted, like, they compared Tea Party members to jihadists before. They have a clear bias. They're obviously a liberal blog. They covered up for Democratic power establishment figures like John Kerry. They lie to you. The most egregious one, spirit cooking. The spirit cooking claim is false. Wait, excuse me. There's an email from WikiLeaks. They even put this in an article. They have no shame at all. Talking about how John and Tony are going to the spirit cooking dinner. And then they say, no, this is all false. What you're seeing is the sore losers of the mainstream media who are losing their American viewership because of their lies, because of their propaganda, because of their disinformation, because of their well-known connections with the CIA, running Operation Mockingbird, lying to you, manipulating you, telling you there's weapons of mass destruction, creating panic and chaos, and destroying the basic good and humanity in life. They're losing, and they're losing money because of that, because they're losing viewership to independent journalists like me. And now they did this as a way to beat out their competitors because I am competition to them, and I will be releasing information that they could look at and be like, oh, no, that's fake news. Let's censor and block them. And when they do that, no one will be able to reach my stuff. Now this is a clear attack on conservative. I'm not a conservative. Bill O'Reilly called We Are Change a jihad-loving liberal organization before. But then also Chris Matthews called us right-wing racist teabaggers. I am neither. I don't like the left. I don't like the right. I call them out like I see them. They're both full of crap. But now if I attack liberal, blah, you're gone. Which is outright hypocrisy and just makes me want to stand more with the conservatives since now they're the underdogs. And that's naturally who I am. But, and again, Facebook has been perpetrating this. It's been a great platform for people to reach people and talk to people and to stay in touch with people. But everything else they do is utterly horrible and despotic. Throughout the last few years, they've been releasing algorithms that just create more confirmation bias, create an echo chamber where people only hear their political beliefs, which will not progress society, because to progress society, we need to hear all different kinds of ideas and to learn from all different sides and not just hear one side of the liberal leftist story and just go along that way. That's regression. That's called the dumbing down of society. Opening up yourself to new ideas helps you progress. So screw you, Facebook, for ruining humanity in many different ways. But immediately, people should check out other platforms that are censorship-proof, blockchain-based, and actually reward you for your activity, like Steemit.com. You can check us out, steemit.com/@LukeWeAreChange. We're going to start moving and generating all of our content on there and give you also some exclusive content that you won't see anywhere else but on that platform, mainly because you can't block the blockchain. It's a whole nother Bitcoin-related conversation. Second thing you need to do immediately is when you go to wearechange.org, sign up on our email list. We still haven't emailed anyone. This is our backup for when there's total censorship. There's already a little bit of censorship. Our reach has been extremely limited on Facebook. We've been screwed immediately because Facebook wants us to pay. I'm not going to give a cent to that horrible, immoral, biased, butthole company and Mark Zuckerberg based on basic principles, no matter how many views I get. I will never do that because that's just the principles that we work on. But let's talk about this for a second. I think I have a solution to this. Since Facebook is a users-based platform, what if all of us who are on Facebook and don't want to leave Facebook and still want to participate on there, because I know there's a bunch of them who just don't want to jump ship. What if we take their reporting-based platform for fake news, like this, we take that, and then every time there's a mainstream media article, just report them and flood their system, troll their system, where the mainstream media resources are taken away, where they have to have their own crap, their own propaganda thrown back at them. Let's call this Operation Throw Back Crap at the Crap Creators. I don't know. There has to be a better name for it. Let me know in the comment section below. What should be this kind of rally call that we all have? I think it would be really interesting and really fun to just troll their system, bombard them with their own crap, throw the crap back in their face. So they have to be looking through their own bull crap that they all put out and then looking at that throughout their whole news. I don't know if this is a great campaign. Let me know what this campaign should be called. But if you like it, share this video. Get this information out there, because it would be pretty freaking interesting to see their whole platform just getting inundated with their own crap. I say do it. Oh, yeah, subscribe. And again, YouTube, too. YouTube, you son of a bitch. Our view rating has been hurt so significantly. We have over, 400,000 subscribers. No, it doesn't get out to any of them. Subscribers don't even matter anymore on YouTube. You have to subscribe and then click the bell button. And then even if you do click the bell button for notifications, users are even complaining they're not getting our stuff from there anyway. So, god darn it, share. Share this video with your friends. You can't even share it on Facebook because they're going to screw that. They're going to call that fake news. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to do an email thing. Sign up on the email. Please. I haven't sent out one email. I may send out one email once a week. Maybe. But we're getting screwed now already. Let's do this. Come on.
We Are Change on YouTube, wearechange.org. Check them out. Now, I think that for a lot of the alternative media, we're going to have to get more structured. And we're also going to have to rely a lot on our supporters, our listeners, viewers, readers, because otherwise they will come and basically blacklist most alternative media that doesn't have any type of means of fighting it. And some of it will be kind of in a way what we are now, but even to a more extreme where, more guerrilla radio type, pirate radio. But I think it's going to be hard with how powerful alternative media has become. I think if people are forced towards mainstream media, they're going to see that they're already away from mainstream media because they don't trust it. So if they feel like they're being pushed, they're being forced. I think that's when you're going to see a pushback. Now, I believe that the whole Russia hacking, there might be some truth to it when it comes to the emails. I don't know. WikiLeaks has said that it wasn't Russia. I don't know. But I know that they are using that as the excuse to either, stop Trump or stop fake news, mainly alternative media. But, it's also creating a tension before Trump even gets into office between the United States and Russia. And the tension's already been building between the West and Russia because of Ukraine, troops and maneuvers on borders, and Syria. This from theblaze.com. Obama claims Russian hacking stopped after he told Putin to cut it out. President Barack Obama claimed Friday that Russian interference in the U.S. election ended after he told Russian President Vladimir Putin in September to cut it out. The Russian intrusion into the emails of Democratic National Committee staffers had happened before Obama met with Putin. And Obama said that he told the other world leader to make the cyber attack stop. Particularly, Obama was concerned that Russia could hack into the actual election process itself and affect the outcome. But that didn't happen, he added. In early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and that there were going to be serious consequences if he didn't, Obama said at his end-of-the-year press conference Friday before heading to Hawaii for the holidays. And in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process, Obama said. But then another article popped up on the Blaze. Russia to Obama. This was posted 9 hours ago. And it says the Russian government is firing back at the Obama administration in the escalating war of words over the hacking of former Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's email inbox. President Barack Obama, who will leave office in a little over a month, has promised that the United States will retaliate against Russia for their alleged interference with America's election. at a time and place of our choosing. According to CNN, the Russians are firing back, demanding that the Obama administration provide proof of Russia's involvement in the hack. Presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it was indecent of the United States to groundlessly accuse Russia of intervention in the U.S. election campaign, Russian state news agency TASS reported. They should either stop talking about that or produce some proof at last. Otherwise, it all begins to look unseemly, Peskov reportedly said about the latest accusations that Russia was responsible for hacker attacks. The virtually unanimous assessment of intelligence agencies in the hack of the Podesta email inbox originated somewhere in Russia. However, the Russian government disputes that they were actively involved, and the FBI Director James Comey has suggested that the hack might have been carried out by a private individual operating from within Russia. Podesta's email inbox was hacked when he responded to a phishing email requesting that he entered his email credentials. The phishing email itself bore hallmarks of prior Russian espionage attempts, and the bit.ly link in the phishing email directed him to a server used by the Fancy Bear cyber espionage group, which is widely considered by cyber experts to be affiliated with the Russian FSB. The same Fancy Bear group has been implicated in attacks aimed at dissidents in Ukraine and Georgia, as well as military attaches in Western Europe and dissident Russian journalists. So we really don't know the facts. Again, people are giving Trump crap for saying, "Oh, I don't trust intelligence agencies." Well, I don't trust them because they definitely, like the CIA, tend to maybe seem like they act as rogue agencies. Maybe that kind of spurs a distrust. Definitely when, there's so many claims of them around the world organizing these coups against foreign, dictators and governments. Maybe that might be why people might not trust their assessment about foreign countries. Maybe it just seems like a setup for war. Okay, cover a few things here before we end the broadcast. Give me a second here. I'll get to this. Sorry. This is not loading. Try this again here. Okay, we're getting this loaded back up here. Another Rand Paul article, this out of blaze.com. Rand Paul wants Obama's executive orders aggressively torn down once Trump's term starts. Senator Rand Paul sat down with Freedom Works Director of Public Policy and Legislative Affairs, Jason Pye, to discuss the near future when the new Congress begins. To kick off the interview, Pye asked Paul what was on the docket for the first session. Paul responded by saying that Obama's executive orders are about to face the guillotine. Remember when President Obama said he was going to have his pen and his phone and he'd jolly well do what he wanted? Said Paul. Congress wasn't doing what he thought they should be doing. He went around us through executive order and regulatory order. But all of that can be undone with the new president, continued Paul. So I'm hoping that they will aggressively undo, and I'm hearing that from day one there's going to be dozens of regulations repealed and changed. As previously reported, Paul has been itching to kill many of the jobs-killing regulations forced upon the nation by Obama for some time. He made the prediction early on, saying they were going to spend the first month passing the repeal of Obama regulations, and they will be signed by Trump. It would appear that Paul's predictions are easily coming true. I had a article from Jeffrey Tucker from liberty.me, tucker.liberty.me. Lift your spirits, attend Freedom Fest. For those that don't know, a dark cloud is hanging over the lives of freedom lovers these days. It seems all the news is bad. It's hard to take, and the personal anxiety it causes, it's just too much. Every day we are being buffeted about bad ideas coming from left, from the right, and back again. And contest is dragging down the prospects for freedom itself. We can't sit on the sidelines and just watch this with the view that we cannot change things itself. You look at Cato's latest report on human freedom around the world, you see the proof freedom is actually slipping around the globe for the first time in a very long time. Reading this report is a real bummer, and it seals the deal. We've got a serious problem, and it's here at home as well. I won't go into detail because you know this already. No one knows how it is going to turn out, but just watching the daily grind takes a toll, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. But can we really let this happen? No, it's been worse, much worse. Think back to 1946, the world smashed by war, and the socialist Keynesians on the march through the universities and popular press talk about the absence of hope. But you know what? It was in those years that the Foundation for Economic Education and the Heroin Society were founded. No one thought they could achieve what seemed impossible, but through hard work and the creation of new networks, they built something awesome, a social and intellectual network that beat back the bad and ushered in the new. We have to act now. We can't sit on the sidelines and just watch this with the view that we cannot change things. Becoming hermits doesn't work either. That is the surest way to throw away all the progress we've made. The cure, so here's a suggestion. Go to Freedom Fest this year. The place is Las Vegas. The dates are July 19th through the 22nd, 2017. It's the 10th anniversary. The theme is Exploring New Frontiers, and all the promotional content features a Star Trek theme. You don't have to care about Star Trek, though. The conference is for everyone who cares about the future of freedom. What you discover immediately upon arrival is perhaps the most exciting thing. This conference is huge, diverse, energetic, uplifting, sustainable, and super exciting. You will feel your mood change immediately. The content of the conference includes new films, great lectures, fun debates. I was in one last year, panels on every topic imaginable, and a great atmosphere of expertise, forward thinking, and old fashioned joy. What's to be joyful about? We have the right ideas on our side. We have smart people everywhere in academia, media, and publishing. We have the raw numbers like we've never had before. You find thousands of others ready to fight for liberty in every way they know how. In many ways, I'm an incurable optimist. I look around the world and I see where freedom is making huge strides. Technology is booming. Wars are ever fewer. Humanity is being fed as never before. Poverty is plunging. But you know what? People said similar things in the 1880s. They never imagined that only a couple of decades later the world would be engulfed in the flames of war, all due to some stupid diplomatic errors. But with the proper knowledge, direction, and courage, we can try to prevent those mistakes from being repeated. Danger and hope. Here's the hard truth: so long as there are big states, there is always a danger of regress. This is what we must fix. There are no guarantees, but we can try. We have social and intellectual networks as never before, which can be activated and made effective. In order to do that, however, we need to be there, meet people, get new ideas, find our niche, and get to work. At Freedom Fest this year, there will be lots of FEE people present. We'll have a table where you can hang out. I'm speaking, as is my friend Lawrence Reed, plus many others, but that's just the beginning. There are hundreds of presentations and many main speakers from many organizations, plus, and this is especially delightful, there's an incredible amount of fun to be had at dinners, dances, and just hangouts in general. Hey, it's Vegas, so I hope to see you there. July seems to be a long time from now, but in the meantime, keep your chin up, keep fighting and doing, and let's meet up in the summer and assess our progress. So far as I'm concerned, Freedom Fest is the perfect setting for this and for plotting a future of freedom. So go check them out. And, you know, that's one. That one is in, you know, the United States in Las Vegas. There's another festival that a lot of freedom lovers will be attending, and that one's Anarcho Poco. Go check them out. Anarcho Poco 2017. And of course, that's in Acapulco, Mexico. And that one will have a lot of libertarian and ANCAPs and, you know, many other fringes and areas of the freedom movement. And, you know, it takes all sorts of ideas to pave a path forward, and Freedom Fest will be one of those, and Anarcho Poco will be another one. And, you know, just keep your eye out for more that will be coming You got Porcupine Festival in New Hampshire. That one will be coming up. And I think that even though we are seeing a regress, I think that there are enough people waking up to what we need to do to get back to freedom. I think our mistakes are being repeated faster, so it doesn't seem so far away that we prosper. Therefore, people are like, okay, we need to reverse what we're doing here. We understand more regulation is not helping. I think we are becoming more enlightened. And I think that's also what this, fake news and all the censorship can hurt. But that helps, these authoritarians, if they can control the narrative, then they can direct the populace to do their bidding for them. And that's why I believe they are going after the internet. And they're using fake news, Russian hacking, and all of this as their justification. But in reality, this is something that they've been involved into in other countries. So, it's one of those hypocrisies, but nothing's 100%, and I don't think a lot of people are fooled and believe that it is. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. When you're prepping, one thing is, again, you can't always carry a lot of cash on you, but one thing that you can do is put your eggs in multiple baskets, gold and silver being one of them. If you go to antityrannynews.com/metal, it will take you to a Moggy Metal. Shop at Moggy Metal through antityrannynews.com. You get the same great prices, same great shipping rates, and at the same time, we get a little kickback to help cover operating costs here on our end. And, gold and silver, Moggy Metals is my choice, and I think they got great prices, some of the best I've seen, and great selections. Check them out, antityrannynews.com/metal. Don't forget to help support UCY.tv. One way you can support UCY is if you go to UCY.tv. At the top, there's a little support tab. You click that support tab, it'll take you to a donate page. You can donate to UCY.tv and help cover our UCY, the network's operating costs on their end. And another way you can do it is a lot of people shop Amazon. If you shop Amazon.com, if you go to UCY.tv, scroll down towards the bottom, click the Amazon button, shop Amazon through UCY.tv. You get the same great prices, same great shipping rates that you normally get. And at the same time, UCY gets a little kickback, and that helps cover operating costs on the networks. And again, you don't pay more by shopping through that link. It's just a way to support UCY, and it's a way that UCY partnered with Amazon.com. So again, UCY.tv and antityrannynews.com/metal. Check out Amagi Metals. And again, with the censorship, it's important that you support alternative media because we know the mainstream media and the establishment are wanting to censor and break us down. Take care. Stay tuned here on UCY.tv.
Racers on the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night at 9.